Picture a wind just howling across these endless Central Asian deserts. You can almost see the ruins, half buried in sand, whispering about an empire that once controlled the world's richest trade routes. An empire whose horsemen were supreme, all the way from the Hindu Kush to the plains of India. Yeah, this was a real giant of the ancient world.
And yet, it just vanished. It faded so completely from our collective memory that its name is, often just a footnote in history books, if it's even there at all. So how does that happen? How does an empire that connected worlds simply disappear? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to solve together.
All right, so to unravel this whole mystery, we have to go way back to the very beginning. To understand how the Kushan Empire was forgotten, we first have to understand how it was born. And like so many great stories, this one doesn't begin with some glorious victory, but with a pretty desperate escape.
Okay, so our story kicks off with a people called the Yuchi. Now, these guys weren't conquerors to start with. Not at all. They were refugees, fleeing for their lives from the steppes of northern China. They were pushed out by a rival nomadic power, the Xiongnu, these incredibly fierce pastoral warriors. And the Yuchi's desperate journey west? It would end up reshaping half the world.
So let's just walk through this journey because it's pretty wild. Around 200 BCE, bam, they're defeated by the Xiongnu and begin this long, long exodus. For decades, they just drift west, an entire nation on the move, until they finally settle in a place called Bactria, what we'd now call parts of Afghanistan and Central Asia. Now, this land was already soaked in history, littered with the remnants of Alexander the Great's Greek kingdoms. And it's here, slowly, that the 5 separate Yuezhi tribes start to merge, until finally, around 30 CE, a warlord named Kujaluk Hadfises unites them all, and just like that, the Kushan Empire is officially born.
So you might be wondering, who were these people exactly? Well, ancient sources describe the Yuezhi as this confederation of Indo-European nomads, and they were apparently noted for being tall and pale-eyed. These were wanderers who basically took over the broken pieces of a Greek kingdom and over generations forged them into something completely new. These refugees, these wanderers, these were the people who would build the mighty Kushan Empire.
So for about its first 100 years, the empire grows steadily, consolidating its power. But then, a leader comes along who doesn't just expand the empire, he completely redefines it. This was the age of Kanishka, and folks, this was a golden age.
Okay, so this chart kind of lays out the escalating ambition of these early Kushan rulers, right? You've got Kujaluk Hadfises. He does the grunt work of actually founding the empire by uniting everybody. Then his successor, Vima, establishes its economic muscle by minting the first pure gold coins in the region for centuries, stamping them with the image of the Hindu god Shiva. But it was Kanishka who took that foundation of unity and wealth and built a legend on top of it. Because the second Kanishka takes the throne, everything just accelerates. The slow and steady part, that's over. What comes next is an absolute explosion of conquest, culture, and religion. I mean, this guy was an absolute force of nature. His armies just swept across northern India, creating an empire that was a rival to Rome itself. He built these magnificent twin capitals, and, this is crucial, he secured the entire central part of the Silk Road, which made the flow of goods and ideas between East and West safer than it had ever been. But his biggest impacts, they were cultural and spiritual. His coins featured gods from pretty much every major tradition, which shows this incredible tolerance. And he sponsored this revolutionary new style of art called Gandhara, which blended Greek realism with Buddhist themes.
And this right here, this might be one of his most profound legacies. You have to understand, before Kanishka, the Buddha was never depicted as a person, only through abstract symbols like footprints or an empty throne. But under his patronage, sculptors gave the Buddha a human face for the very first time, often with these really serene Greek-style features. He literally changed how millions of people envision their faith.
And seriously, don't make the mistake of thinking this is just some dusty old history. Kanishka convened a huge council that formalized the doctrines of what we call Mahayana Buddhism. This was a revolutionary new way of thinking that said enlightenment was available to everybody, not just monks. And it's this form of Buddhism that would spread all across China, Korea, and Japan. The spiritual beliefs of over 1 billion people today can be traced directly back to that council.
But you know how it goes. No golden age can last forever. The very thing that made the Kushan so great, their interconnectedness with the world, also exposed them to new dangers. And the fire that had burned so brightly began to face threats from every single direction.
When Kanishka died around 150 CE, it left this massive power vacuum. All that energy, that drive that had defined his rule, it started to fade.
And at the same time, a new aggressive power was rising in the West, ready to challenge the Kushantas for control, the Sasanian Persians. And the collapse, when it came, happened with just stunning speed. The Sasanian Persians attacked from the west. And get this, within just 15 years, they had conquered Bactria, the Kushan heartland. The rulers who were left, the so-called Little Kushans, clung to their territory in India. But they were really just a shadow of their former selves, weakened by civil wars and the rise of the local Gupta Empire. By 375 CE, their last known king, Kipanata, just vanishes from the pages of history. He's gone, leaving behind a silent empire.
And if you need one detail that just says it all, it's this. The empire that had introduced pure gold coinage to Central Asia, it ended its days minting worthless, debased discs that were little more than copper, from gold to dust in just a few generations.
So, just like that, the empire was gone. Its cities fell to ruin, its name was forgotten. But ideas are a lot harder to kill than empires. And even though the Kushans vanished, their influence lived on, shaping the world in ways that are still visible today. They're basically hiding in plain sight.
You know that serene, Greek-faced Buddha you might see in a museum? Yep, that's a Kushan echo. The Silk Road that became the highway for goods, ideas, and religions? Well, the Kushans made that global network possible. The kind of Buddhism practiced all across East Asia. That's their legacy. And in a world of clashing empires, they created a model of a tolerant, multicultural state that saw diversity not as a weakness, but as its greatest strength.
You know, there's this one inscription that for me just perfectly captures the Kushan spirit. At one of their major religious sites, an inscription was found that was carved by a Greek architect in perfect Greek script for a temple dedicated to a Zoroastrian-style fire cult, all of it built by rulers who came from the Chinese frontier. I mean, that incredible fusion. That was the Kushan Empire.
So here's where we're left. An empire that connected worlds, that gave a face to a faith, and that changed the spiritual destiny of 1 billion people was almost completely erased by the sands of time. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other giants are sleeping just beneath the surface of our history, just waiting to be remembered?